what worked
Yeah.
5-10 years ago. Yeah, I graduated 5 years ago, and apparently rice is out the door. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And I'm like,
When
well,
did this happen?
yeah, I'm like, if we don't rice, what are we doing? Like,
Yeah.
so I think it's important to stay on top of it because it makes us better clinicians, but better people. And I agree with you. People, I've come across a lot of followers and therapists when Medicare cuts happen or are announced. They're very nervous about the position of their job. And they always ask me, Margie, are you nervous? Like, I'm not nervous because, one, there is no way the PT field's going to thrive without us because PTs are up to here with evaluations. They're not going to have time to see follow-up visits. The PT field needs us, but you have to advocate for yourself and your field. If you don't feel like you're valuable, a PT and a company, an insurance company, and a patient won't see you valuable either. And that's why they're doing these cuts. We're not speaking up that we not only have a degree, we also have a license to practice and be the right-hand man or woman by a PT. And I think this is where we need to start making some noise.
Hey friends, welcome back to the show. Today's guest is Margie Win. Margie is a physical therapist assistant from Virginia. She is a home health PTA, but she is also a content creator and the owner of not just a PTA Instagram account, as well as Therapy Talk Thursday podcast. Margie and I, we talk about all kinds of fun and interesting things today. Margie and I kind of dive deep into some of the gaps that she noticed in the field, which kind of therefore inspired her to create the content that she does. Margie also is a huge advocate for PTAs, for physical therapy, and for pay transparency. We talk a lot about that. So much stuff that you can learn. She is definitely here for you as a PTA. She's here for students, PTs and PTAs alike. You should definitely check her out on Instagram, not just a PTA. Check out her podcast, Therapy Talk Thursday. We will make sure that all of that is linked in the show notes as well. But welcome to today's show with Margie. Here we go. Hello, welcome Margie.
Hi, Katie.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Awesome. I'm good. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for agreeing to join and talk to us. You and I have been trying to get something together for quite some time. I was really, really hopeful that we would have gotten a chance to meet up when I was in DC for House of Delegates, but as most times I go to any APTA event, I always assume I have more time on my hands than what I actually do. I didn't have that much time on my hands.
It's okay. No worries at all.
And we are both very busy people. You're a very busy person too. So I'm really excited that you took some time out to talk to us today. I'm super excited to hear about all of the things that you have going on. So if you don't mind, will you go ahead and give a brief introduction to our audience of who you are and what you do?
Sure. Thanks again for having me on. I've been watching your platform grow, and I'm very excited for this interview today. My name is Margie Win. I am from Virginia, born and raised right outside of Washington, D.C. I'm a physical therapist assistant. I mainly work in the home health setting now. Been a PTA for 5 years and been in home health for about 4 out of those 5 years. I had some previous outpatient setting experience, and I guess, own or the creator of Not Just a PTA on social media, and mainly on Instagram, but I have Twitter, I'm not very active on. TikTok, still learning, and Facebook, it just links with Instagram. But mainly, you'll find me mostly on Instagram, where I post a lot about a day in my life, advocating for PTAs, answering questions, whether it's from students or new grads or anyone interested in home health. I don't know about you, but when I was a student, home health was not a rotation that was offered for my clinical rotations. So I think it is like kind of like that mystery, like what is home health? And there's a lot of questions, and and myths that are mainly based on fear when I talk to a lot of clinicians that
Hmm.
want to transition to home health. So I help them navigate those questions and decide if that's a setting that they want to go into. A big advocate for salary transparency, and I think home health helps me do that because it's one of the higher paying settings.
Yeah, that's incredible. You are 100% correct. I have worked in PTA education for quite some time, specifically in clinical education. And you're right, home health contracts are really hard to come by for students. It's kind of a gray area, like what that looks like, and each company's a little different.
Mhm.
Like there's not those same like I want to say hard and fast rules as in your brick and mortar.
Mhm.
You know, places to go to. So I agree with you. I think that it's a huge gap that our students don't necessarily always get the opportunity or the chance to see, and that's sad to me because in a couple years, a lot of students are going to be heading into that type of a setting or looking into that type of setting. So I think what you're offering is something that we really, 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 really needed. So I'm excited about it. So good job. Well
Thank
done.
you.
You're doing awesome. Keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the whole reason why I started this podcast was because I wanted to highlight all of the things that PTAs do aside from being just a PTA, right? So this ties perfectly into the title of your Instagram content, being more than just a PTA. So if I were to ask you the question, what makes you a PTA plus? What kind of things would you use to fill in that blank? How would you finish that sentence?
I would say I'm a PTA plus a big advocate for the field, specifically for PTAs and student PTAs. I don't want to say a content creator because I feel like there's like this weird notion behind being like, I don't know, social media famous or anything like that. Um, I am a mentor or a resource for PTAs that couldn't find other resources, specifically online slash social media. When I was a student, I didn't find a lot of PTA resources online. It was mainly catered to like
Mm-hmm.
DPTs, which is
Mm-hmm.
fine, but like it's a little different as a PTA. So I wanted to like have a platform for that. I am also a podcast producer. My podcast is Therapy Talk Thursday, and I bring on a variety of clinicians, but mainly PTAs to come on and tell their story. I truly believe everyone has a story to share.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just because you're a PTA doesn't mean that we have the same background or the
Mm-hmm.
same work experience or education experience. And I think it's important because um, even if one person relates to you, I think that's the connection that we need so we're not so alone in the field, especially when times are tough, like, with Medicare cuts or
Mm-hmm.
um, feeling lost as a new grad or going into a clinical rotation you're really not comfortable with. I think hearing other people's stories, sharing their experiences helps make that connection and helps make us grow as a field and just have colleagues and networking experience that, hey, yeah, I remember Katie, or like, I remember Margie talk about this. And I think it helps us, in a way change the field instead of making it so black and white. We have a little bit more of a connection.
Agree. Agree. And I think especially that year after we graduate, I learned so much in that year after graduation. And sometimes when I say that to students, they're like, wait a minute, you mean to tell me I've been through a 2 year program and did all of this and I still have more to learn?
Hmm.
And I'm like, yeah, you do.
Yep.
But that first year, like everything starts to mesh. And I think that that's what's so amazing about what you're doing is you're giving that real life scenario for the students. You're showing them that I think what you said was the good, bad, and the ugly, right?
Yes.
Like you're showing them all of those things that are kind of scary that
Mhm.
maybe they haven't like had the chance to touch or feel yet in the field, and you're offering that through your platform, and that's important.
Yeah, I'm very like I'm not a big like edit or A and V person when it comes to technology. So like what you get, Like if I record myself, that's what I'm posting. All the all the buts, all the brain freezing.
Yeah.
I think it's important for people to see your authentic self. Everything's not a filter. Everything's not always edited. We make mistakes. And I think it's also important for us to share the bad and the ugly side of our field, because social media has a very weird, I guess, representation of everything's just perfect and it's unicorns and rainbows, and it's not.
Hmm.
And I think before people get into physical therapy, and then with my specialty is home health, you really want to know the ins and outs of it, the pros and cons, and decide for yourself if this is something you want to do. I get a lot of questions from students in the program, especially during when COVID was at its peak, if
Hmm.
it was even worth for them to finish or continue applying
Wow.
for PTA programs, because they heard about the Medicare cuts and they heard that there were a lot of layoffs and furloughs that started with PTAs when it came to the
Hmm.
PT field during the pandemic. And I think it's important to always give an unbiased opinion, but give all the pros and cons, give all the points, and let the person, everyone's different. What works for me may not work for you, and vice versa. I think you mentioned to me you have a family and kids. I don't have anything to tie me down. So, for example, travel would have been very realistic for me because I can just get up and go, which was an option I
Hmm.
was looking at. But for somebody that's very established, have, a kid or 2 or 3, that's not very realistic.
Hmm.
So I try to bring on people to share their story, to be like, "Hey, this is the pro, this is the con, and you decide." And I love getting messages from followers, trying to ask me a question. I think they want me to tell them, like, "Should I do this? Should I do this?" I'm like, "No, I need you to tell me, like, what do you want from
Yeah.
this? Why do you wanna do this?" And I help them kinda walk them through that. So I think it's just very important for us to show all sides of it, and start seeing some changes in our field, and maybe that will lead up to, like, the legislation changes.
I love it. Um, I love your raw honesty, and I think that that is something that it's important. I think it is missing. I mean, do you feel like that was some inspiration for you to kind of start the platforms that you have? Was it because you saw these gaps or missing information? Like, how did that kind of like spark for you?
I felt like when you first, let's say you first log on Instagram and you type in physical therapy because you're interested in the program, or you're a PT and you're trying to find other people to connect with, it's very exercise based. A lot of PT pages show exercise, and then a good chunk of them show education. And I feel like for me, I thought I had to be very proper, and I had to have my hair and makeup done, and I had to sound a certain way. And I found that when I didn't code switch, when I didn't try to make an impression, people interacted with me more. There were more comments, there were more DMs, versus when I'm like, like my Good Morning America face. People were like, they liked it, but they really liked me. Like, you will hear me cuss
Hmm.
on my social media. You will hear me have a mental breakdown because my schedule fell apart. And I think
Uh-huh.
these are realistic. Or I show, when you have a medical emergency, when you have to call 911, that's very intimidating and
Oh gosh,
overwhelming.
yeah.
And I
Hmm.
share with them why um, it's not it's not PT. The physical therapy does not change in any setting. A knee is going to bend and straighten no matter if you're an outpatient, SNF, or home health. It's the other stuff that goes around it, and you have to decide if you're the type of person that can deal with this stuff, or
Mm-hmm.
you need somebody that, and that's fine. You need to find somebody that you need to have teammates or colleagues right next to you so you can bounce ideas off. So I think people like me being honest, because
Hmm.
then they can decide for themselves if this is right for them.
Hmm. Yeah, I really appreciate the information about being unedited. I think when I first started this, and of course I'm still like really new to this. I think this is like maybe the seventh or eighth recording that I've done. So like, I mean, I'm still very fresh to this. But I think there's only been two episodes that anything was actually removed from, and it was because there was like an actual like my internet shut down and we had to cut out like 15 seconds or something. And
Yep.
then one time a guest started coughing. And so we cut out that little piece of it. But
Mhm.
like truly, like this is me. Like
Mhm.
you're getting the real me, you
Yeah.
know. This is, I hope, what you would see if you and I were sitting down and talking to each other
Mhm.
over a cup of coffee. I try to make it also as real as it can be. But I know I had a lot of fear and anxiety about that at first too. Like, you know, how much do you share,
Mhm.
and what do people really care about? And but there's a point where I'm like, well, you know what? I'm going to start it. It's going to be maybe ugly at first. There's going to be some hiccups. My internet kind of stinks. I live in the middle of nowhere. So, you know, this is just kind of like the real me. So
Yeah.
take it or leave it. But
Yep.
I agree with you. I think that people enjoy the raw honesty. They enjoy the unedited version of us. And it is, it is what it is. We
Yeah.
are who we are.
Yeah, I think we just live in a world where there's just a lot of Kardashians, right? Like you turn on the TV, you turn on your social media, everything is filtered and edited. You have to look a certain way and sound and talk a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that as long as you get the information or the message out there, I don't think people care what you really
Mm-hmm.
look like. And I don't think they care about the delivery. They just want the straight facts and tell it them
Mm-hmm.
to them directly. Because a lot of times we don't get that in the real world. Everything is like sugar coated or beat around the bush. And I think you're doing great. and
Oh, well,
I,
thank you.
yeah, I enjoy. Yeah, and I think it's also like people like watching somebody grow. Like,
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
they can always I love it when for example, Drake is a very big artist now. I think he's like named best rapper in the world or something like that. But I remember Drake when he had his mixtape, and I think people really like I knew Margie when she had like 10 followers. Like I knew
Yeah.
Katie, I followed her on her first episode, and I remember who that guest was. Like I think people really like that to see the growth in it
Oh,
and
yeah.
that they can
Uh-huh.
say they were there with you from the beginning or they
Mhm.
followed you from the beginning. I think people really, really like that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I think that I've tried to be pretty transparent with, you know what, people, I'm kind of learning here, so just hang on, we'll see where it goes. So,
Mhm. Yeah. I think it shows that we're not perfect. I'm only 5 years into my career and I still don't know everything, and that's okay. And I think I try to really emphasize on that. Like you won't know everything, whether it's
mhm,
in PT, social media, being a
mhm,
content creator, like everything, every day there's like something new, just like medicine, just like technology, and you just grow and pivot with it. But I think when people, especially students and new grads, see that we also struggle,
mhm,
they feel a little less pressured and the imposter syndrome drops a little bit. And I think that is very important for us to address because our field's very competitive to begin with. The programs are very rigorous. There's only X amount of seats every year, every semester. So it's one, very hard to get in. It's a very, very intense program. It's very expensive. And I feel like they don't know how to like now you can breathe now after graduation just
mhm.
a little bit. They have to like always be on top of their game. And there are some days I am, and there are some days I'm not. There are some days I am still Googling what these medications are, or, what cranial nerve 7 is, because
Mhm.
I'm not in neuro. I don't know, and I don't remember. And I remember to always share that because you're not going to always remember, and you're not
Oh,
always
no.
going to know, and that is
Nope.
okay.
Nope. You got to know your resources. That's one thing that I'm constantly saying to students is know your resources, know where you can find stuff. You're not going to have all the answers. Be comfortable with asking questions to other people. Surround yourself with people who have knowledge, and
Mhm.
you know that's going to help you become a better person. And I think that when I look at your title, not just a PTA, so no, we're not just PTAs, but I think that if you become stagnant, you can become just a
Mhm.
PTA. And that's when you stop learning, when you
Yes.
refuse to learn more information, when you refuse to change and seek new knowledge. You might be just a PTA or just a physical therapist or just a nurse or whatever, you name it.
Mhm.
Um, but that's when you stop seeking new knowledge.
Yes.
That's when that happens. And that's what you're demonstrating is this continuous flow of, well, this happened to me today. This was new. Um, and that's what people are seeing from you.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. We are lifelong learners, and that doesn't matter what field you're in. You don't have to be in PT. You don't have to be in the medical field to be lifelong learners. Like that's exercise for your brain. You're always supposed to learn something new, a new task, a new way to do something, a new hobby, trying something new. Get out there and you know just trying something new and exploring something new. I think it shows growth, and it shows that we're evolving. We're not supposed to remain stagnant.
Hmm.
That's why I think like I think this is varies by state, but like for Virginia, we're required to renew our license every 2 years. Those come with continuing education requirements for a reason.
Hmm.
What worked
Yeah.
5, 10 years ago? Yeah, I graduated 5 years ago, and apparently rice is out the door. And I'm like, what are you talking about? you know? And I'm like,
When
well,
did this happen?
yeah, I'm like, if we don't race, what are we doing? Like, I'm just
Yeah.
like so I think it's important to stay on top of it because it makes us better clinicians, but better people. And
Hmm.
I agree with you. People, I've come across a lot of followers and therapists when cuts happen or are announced, they're very nervous about the position of
Hmm.
their job. And they always ask me, Margie, are you nervous? Like, I'm not nervous because one, there is no way the PT field's going to thrive without us because PTs are up to here with evaluations. They're
Oh
not going to
yeah.
have time
Hmm.
to see follow up visits. The PT field needs us, but you have to advocate for yourself and your field. If you don't feel like you're valuable, a PT and a company, an insurance company, and a patient won't see you valuable either. And that's why
Hmm.
they're doing these cuts. We're not speaking up that we not only have a degree, we also have a license to practice and be the right hand man or woman by a PT. And I think
Hmm.
this is where we need to start making some noise. You know, I think it's
Amen.
very similar to physician assistants who are now, I think they changed the name to physician associates because they are the right hand man or woman of a surgeon, a doctor, of that nature. We can do the same, but we gotta work together. You can't just be like, okay, here comes some cuts and just take it and deal with
Hmm.
it, you
Yep.
know? Because then yeah, you will be obsolete because somebody else gonna step in that's willing to do the work,
Hmm.
that's willing to go the extra mile. You make yourself irreplaceable by picking up these skills, by doing continuing education, picking up a language. I encourage people like you should always try to better yourself, not just as a person, but also as a clinician, so that you're not worried about the next Medicare announcement
Hmm.
or any other insurance.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know that I can add to that. That's awesome. Advocate for yourself.
Yeah.
Show up. I mean, yeah, there's some of us making noise, but it's not enough. Everybody has to speak in a unified voice in
Yeah.
order for us to be sustainable in the future. But I agree with you. I don't think we're going anywhere either. Um, but again, we got to show up. We got to be noisy. We got to let them know we're still here. We're still valuable, and this is
Mhm.
why, and demonstrate it.
Yes.
And I like what you said about talking about mistakes because I tend to tell students about the mistakes that I made, and sometimes they're goofy and silly, but I think it helps them understand that we're all human and we
We're
all
all
make mistakes.
humans. We all make mistakes every day, whether
Yeah.
in the field or out the field, and some hopefully are not any involve any type of safety issues, and then we can
Hmm.
laugh it off. But if it is something that's a little bit more serious, we take it as a learning lesson, and I bet you'll never make that mistake again because
Hmm.
you learned your lesson, and
Oh
I
yeah.
think that's important. I think they said, what is it? Experience and mistakes are the best teachers.
Hmm.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah, definitely.
Mhm.
So I have some funny stories. Maybe that can be another episode is, about funny stories about things that we've said or done or
I
learned
would
from.
love that.
Things not to say.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah,
Just follow my
definitely.
page. That's me every day.
Things not to say. Things you don't want to do. But
Mhm.
so you definitely have your main focus on home health, and you do some outpatient as well. Is that correct?
Yes, I have one of my agencies that I contract for is outpatient. They have a clinic, but they also do in-home physical therapy, which is confusing because to the average Joe, in-home physical therapy and home health physical therapy sound synonymous. So
Hmm.
like they sound, but it's just a way of billing. So correct. It is the same. I am in the home of the patient doing physical therapy. It's how it's being billed. I enjoy home health a little bit more because of the autonomy and the flexibility I have. But I do miss outpatient, so I get
Hmm.
to enjoy a little bit of both worlds in this situation.
That's really cool. So, what kind of responses and reactions do you get from patients or coworkers when you're like, "So, I have this side gig, and I'd like to take a video or whatever." Like what kind of reactions do you get? Like, are people like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, that's cool," or like, "What are you talking about?" Or
Yes. So it comes in two ways. So one, always ask the patient or whoever you're trying to film, like you're trying to do something for educational purposes. Nobody likes to be taken advantage of or
hmm
exploited. So please be,
hmm
really respectful of that. Even if you're not showing their face, you are in their
hmm
home. Just think about how you would want to be treated in your home. So I usually ask first. If I don't ask first, I want them to see something. So usually it's something has to do with gait, or I want to show them that one side of their body is doing something and not the other. And patients may not be able to notice that until they
hmm
see it. So it's very helpful. I pull up my iPad and record. I'm like, look, this is what you're supposed to do. Look how far you're leaning to side bending. Look how
mm,
far your foot is stepping in ahead of your cane or something like that. Or show them, some of them, like especially my post-operative patients, want to see the back of their legs and how bruised they are, but they can't
yeah,
turn. So that is
yeah,
also another thing. And always ask before you post. And I'm an independent contractor, so I contract with a bunch of companies. None of my agencies have really said anything. My page is public, so they can
hmm
follow or they can not, but they know what I do on social media, but I think they also know that I always ask patients. Like they
oh
hold
yeah,
me to a
hmm
higher standard, so they're like, she wouldn't do anything dumb, or I don't ever post my agency's name or brand or
hmm
tag them.
hmm
In case something does happen, I don't want their names tied, and they don't want their names tied to this
of
because it
course,
has nothing
yeah,
to do
hmm
with
hmm
so most of my posts, if it's with patients involved, is an educational thing.
hmm
People really, really like the Day in My Life series. Like they like the type of patients I work with, what kind of exercises I do because I am
hmm
limited. I don't get the joy of having a clinic with all the equipment and machines.
hmm
So they're curious, and I think
yeah,
I like to make them, and people really enjoy them because it gives you a little insight on like what I do, what my life looks like each day, and I think people really really enjoy my time flexibilities, especially parents.
hmm
They really really like that I make my own schedule. So um, let's say kids, get on the bus by 7, 8, you can do that in home health and start your first patient at 9. They get off
hmm
school at 2 or 3, you can go pick them up and
hmm
end your day or go back to work and see another patient and then head home for dinner. And I don't have children, but I strongly urge people to look into home health if they are in the PT
mm
field.
hmm
This might be your thing if you want to be an active patient, be involved, and it doesn't have any conflicts. And just showing that side of home
hmm
health, I think people really like it.
Yeah. Do you see that home health is just going to continue to grow? Because it seems to me that it has really grown significantly over the last 5 years. I mean, do you kind of see that projection continue or?
Um, from my personal experience, I was a full-time outpatient clinician when the pandemic started. Like March 2020, I got furloughed. However, I was a PRN home health clinician and they were still going. But we were masked up, suited up. I looked like
Mhm.
a hazmat person coming into someone's home, but we were
I'm
still.
sure you did.
Yeah, the scale, like the census was low because elective surgeries were limited.
Mhm.
Um, at the hospital, but we were still seeing patients because most of our patients in home health are homebound. So they couldn't go out anyways, pandemic or not. So I do feel like home health stayed steady in the pandemic and that's why they're booming now versus SNFs had to close, outpatient had to close during the pandemic, and now they're slowly kind of building back up. Another thing is, I think home health, where I say if people are moving, PTs and PTAs will have a job, will always have a job because of it.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, the inevitable is people are going to get injured, and
Yeah.
we are
Mhm.
needed for that. I think home health is considered subacute, so as soon as you have surgery or any type of hospitalization, if you're not in going into rehab, you're going home and you're going to have home health. So I think it kind of goes hand in hand, and that's why like it's so busy and like they're always hiring. I think it's a really good thing. Even if you do PRN, you'll stay busy if you just need a little bit of extra money on the side or on the
Mhm.
weekends. Home health is open 24/7, Sunday through Saturday. I only work weekdays, but there are people that only work weekends because they may
Mhm.
be involved in their kids' life during the weekdays, or they have a full-time job during the weekdays. Um, so I think it's just it goes hand in hand of how the hospital works and the doctors there. If they're busy, we're busy.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. And something that you mentioned earlier is how passionate you were about pay transparency. And I know that you've touched on some subjects that I think that a lot of people are very hesitant to touch on, as far as like the transparency and how to negotiate. What kind of sparked that interest for you? What made this a passion for you?
I think I was just so upset when PTAs shared their salary with me, especially in outpatient. I had someone I still remember in Pennsylvania, and he was making like in the teens per hour. Right, I know. The same
Wow.
expression I had, and I'm like, and I felt like, um, I don't know if he was suppressing how he felt because I don't want to speak on anyone's behalf and feelings, and but it felt like he was like, "It's fine, like it's low cost of living here, like I don't need a lot," and I'm just like, "Okay." And then I think things changed when he got married and had a kid, and I'm like, "This is not a
Mm-hmm.
livable wage." And I'm like, "Yeah, it's not." um,
Wow. Yeah.
and then I pose the question often, and that those posts get a lot of traction. People are
Hmm.
here sharing their salaries or sharing what their first job was and how much they made and what setting. Because I think this opens up the tool. A lot of times I get messages like, "Hey Margie, I'm a new grad or I'm switching settings and I don't know how much SNFs pay in Iowa. I don't either." Like,
Hmm.
I,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not the BLS, the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, but I do
Hmm.
give people resources. I suggest you check Indeed, LinkedIn, and the BLS.gov site
Hmm.
because they have data. But I think the best data you can get are your colleagues and your coworkers and your
Hmm.
former classmates because this is up to date information. It's
Hmm.
relevant. And I don't know where the stigma from not being hush hush and not speaking about transparency came from. But I think,
Hmm.
and I think now we live in a generation where it's a little bit more open to talk about it
Yeah.
because you need
Hmm.
to know your worth. There's a
I
reason
agree. Hmm.
why white men get paid the most. There's a reason why Hispanic women get paid the least. It creates competition and it's not fair if you and I have the same degree and license and have the same years of experience and let's say the same con ed specialties and certifications. Why are you getting paid more?
Hmm.
Because you're a man or because you're white. So I feel like I often stir the pot on social media because I do pose those questions. It is uncomfortable, but you
Yeah.
know what's more uncomfortable? When you can't pay for your bills, when you can't
Hmm.
feed your kids, and student loans are coming back in less than 2 weeks. The
Hmm.
payments are starting.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's what you should be uncomfortable about. Um,
Hmm.
and I urge people to um, get paid what they're worth. And as a new grad, you're like, I don't even know what that means. I don't know what Margie's saying. But I'm just like, I think when it comes to salary, yes, it's scary. Um, but I feel like I don't know why the PT field people are so I feel like we just settle. Maybe it's because we do reimbursements from the insurance company, but like when I had to exchange or buy all 4 new tires. The price was the price. I had a Costco coupon and that was it, but I couldn't negotiate. I paid the price.
Mhm.
And I feel like in PT, we don't do that. We're just like,
Mhm.
okay, whatever Kaiser gives me, whatever Anthem reimburses
Yeah.
us, and whatever Medicare gives us, it's just we just settle. And
Yeah.
and I think I know cash base is really a hot topic in PT right now. It doesn't work for everybody, patients and clinicians,
Mhm.
but I think it's important that we need to be paid our worth. There's no way you, as a practicing clinician with a license and a degree, should be paid less than somebody that doesn't have a license. I mean, that doesn't even have a degree. Like, I get sad when I hear that retailers, sales associates at the mall make more than you. And they didn't have to have a degree for that. Like, what was your
Mhm.
your first job or your high school job? You didn't need a degree for that. So I
Mhm.
just feel like there's just some weird gray area that we're not talking about, and I don't know why, because it's not gonna change if you don't talk about it. So I urge people. I post often about it. People really like my end of the month story posts because they are excited to see, like, how much potential they could make as a home health
Mhm.
PTA, because I share how much I make down to the penny. I don't
Mhm.
hide everything. I think you may estimate what I'm gonna make by the end of the year before I know, because that's how transparent I am.
Mhm.
Um, it's just important to me, and I think it's important for women and people of color to we need to be paid equally.
Absolutely. I don't think you're stirring the pot. I think you're sparking the question. And I agree with you. I don't know where the whole pay thing came from. I mean, I remember growing up that you didn't talk about that, and like your parents didn't talk about that kind of stuff. Like it was like hush hush and whatnot. But I agree. And sometimes it is so hush hush that I don't always know what to like advise new fresh PTAs, like what's normal in this area. Well, I'm not always sure. And like you said, especially when you go out of state, I'm like, I have no idea what happens outside of the state of Ohio as far as pay goes. And it does, of course, change and fluctuate a little bit. I think APTA just rolled out some data about
Mhm,
pay as well. So that's always a great place for people to go to, also for some information about pay. But yeah, it's a conversation that we need to have, and I think it's one that it's okay for you to spark that conversation because it's not always happening.
mhm.
And we do need to have these important conversations about what's happening with pay and transparency and equal pay.
Yeah,
And I know that, oh, go ahead,
Oh, no,
continue.
no, no, I was just saying thank you, and I agree. I think it's hard. Um, it is a hard thing to talk about, just like religion or weight. I would
Hmm.
encourage people, if they're gonna ask somebody in the field their salary, like, definitely have an elevator pitch. Be like, "Hey, I'm looking to transition into this field or this setting that you're working in, and I was wondering if you would be open to talking about salary. I don't really know
Hmm.
what the ballpark is, or can you give me a range?" I think if you ask for a range, people are more willing to talk to you versus like, "What
Hmm.
do you make right now? Right now,
Yeah.
Katie, what is the,
Hmm.
the dollar
Yeah.
amount?" I think that's like it's not like you feel attacked, but like they get a little caught off guard.
Yeah.
I think you just have to be strategic with your language. Um,
Hmm.
and research. A lot of places now are posting their salary. I am like, when I look on job boards, I really, really like Indeed. I
Hmm.
think the state of New York made a requirement for them to post, all jobs need to have a salary next to it, and that's fair. You can't advertise you have competitive salary if you don't post it. you know?
Yeah. What does that mean? Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah, exactly. So I think these laws and changes are important. I do hope that it spreads across the board for all 50 states, because then we'll really know. I also encourage people to have regular is whatever definition you take of it, to have regular conversations of raises or contract renegotiations. I would say anywhere from 6 months to a year is regular for me. Some people it's yearly, some people it's every month, you know.
Hmm.
But I think
Hmm.
the more you ask, the worst they can say is no, we can't give you a raise right now, and you didn't lose anything. But if you
Hmm.
don't speak up, there's potential that you could have been making more, and that would really suck if this whole time you could have made 20% more.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah,
um, it,
absolutely.
I don't know where the job lies. I don't know if it's in the schools, at home. I don't know who's supposed to teach you how to salary
Hmm.
negotiate. I don't know, YouTube, but yeah.
Google.
Yeah, but it is something, like I try to make points on. There's a lot of great like HR or semi HR people that I follow on social media, and they give good pointers.
Hmm.
I would say my best tip for you when it comes into walking into an interview or asking for a raise is apply for jobs online that are in your field and in your area, just so that you can get some information, data collection, and you have proof. Hey, I would like to ask for a raise because of X, Y, and Z I've done the past year, but also your competing company B over here is offering me this much, or they're paying PTAs this much.
Hmm.
Have the proof, and maybe it will make some companies open their eyes, and that they're definitely underpaying us, but they're also overworking us, and that's
Hmm.
a major reason why I left the outpatient field full time.
Hmm. Very interesting. You're coming though prepared.
Yes.
And I think that that's the underlying message there is it's different if you just come and say, hey, I want to raise. You're having people prepare themselves
Mhm.
to demonstrate why they need that raise or why they should or why they deserve it, and the things that they've done to establish their value, the things that they've done to establish their experience, their expertise. You're bringing something to the table with those kind of conversations whenever you are talking to people about how they can negotiate and how they can talk to their employers about that. We're not just showing up saying, hey, we need a raise.
That would be great, right? That would
I
be
right?
so
Yeah.
easy. A cup of coffee. Hey, can I get a raise? That'd be great. But
Yes, here you
we have
go.
hard conversations. We have to, we got to put
Hmm.
our big girl and big boy pants on, and we have to. I always tell people, closed mouths don't get fed.
Hmm.
So like, so it's your choice.
Hmm.
I can definitely give you some tips. I can show you some resources, but I'm not going to hold your hand during your interview process,
Hmm.
or like, you have to speak up on your own. And I think the more assertive you are, and the more just prepared you are, I think you have a better case. And I think oftentimes women, sometimes when we're never assertive, we're bossy or we're demanding. We're assertive is not a vocab a lot of people use, but I do push. I urge people to be bold, be assertive, because that's what you're gonna get what you want. And if they can't give it to you, you need to then pivot and think, do I want to stay, or should I go somewhere else where I
Hmm.
get paid more for
Hmm.
my same work?
Yeah. Self-assess, and maybe that's okay for you to be in the position that you're at, even though it's a little bit less, because that's what works for your
Yep,
family situation or your home situation or
absolutely.
whatever it is. But definitely do those self check-ins.
Hmm.
Like you said, maybe 6 months to a year, you kind of have to stop and reestablish where you are, assess what's going on. I mean, I do that with my car insurance. So like, why
Yeah,
wouldn't you do that with your life?
right.
I do check-ins with every other aspect of my life. So
Mhm.
how's the career going? Is
Yep.
this where I want to be? How does this look in the future?
Yeah.
Self-assess,
Yeah,
lifelong learning.
and let's say they do say no, which there's a 50-50 shot they're gonna say no. Ask them, what would it take, or what pointers can you give me for when we revisit this conversation, that I am guaranteed a raise next time because I've
Hmm.
worked here for X years,
Hmm.
or I am certified in XYZ. Like,
Hmm.
they'll probably have the answers for you. Like, do I have to take up a leadership position, or what is it gonna take?
Hmm.
uh, then you'll have your answer, and you'll work towards that.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Give yourself a goal. I
Yes.
love it. Great. So 5 years ago, when you graduated, 5 years, right? Is that what you said?
Yes,
It's been
I
5 years since
mean,
you. So did you imagine at any point that you were going to have, I think the last